The first time I caught Karen's son circling my Mustang, I thought it was just another entitled kid showing off for his friends. He leaned against the hood like it was his personal throne, a smug grin plastered on his face as he whispered something to the group of boys around him. But then I heard its slurs tossed casually into the air, his laughter sharp and ugly, words meant to cut me down because of the color of my skin. My stomach clenched as rage bubbled beneath the surface, but I forced myself to breathe, to keep my cool. The car wasn't just a car, it was a piece of my father's memory, a 1969 fastback rebuilt with his hands, a symbol of pride and legacy. Seeing it treated like a prop in some racist teenager's power trip was a punch to the chest. And right behind him, standing tall and smug like a general, was Karen herself. Arms folded, face glowing with arrogance, she sneered as if daring me to challenge her son. I walked down the driveway, my voice steady but loud enough to carry. "Get off my car." The laughter stopped. The boy straightened but didn't move, his eyes narrowing. "What's the matter?" "Afraid I'll scratch it," he mocked, tapping the hood with his finger. His friends chuckled nervously, glancing between us, unsure if this was bravado or madness. Karen stepped forward, her voice shrill and commanding. "He can touch whatever he wants. This is a community space, and your precious Mustang is a safety hazard parked in the open like this." I could hardly believe it. My driveway, my property, and she dared to claim it belonged to the community. I pulled my phone from my pocket, recording. "This is my car. My driveway. Keep your son off it, or I'll call the police." Karen's face twisted into something almost feral. "Go ahead," she spat. "The HOA owns this street. You don't belong here anyway. Maybe it's time you learned your place." Her son smirked, emboldened, and whispered another slur under his breath. That was a line crossed. I raised my phone higher, my voice strong. "You've just committed harassment on camera. This isn't about rules, it's about hate. And now I've got proof." The twist came with the sound of tires crunching gravel. A dark SUV pulled up, its siren lights flicking on just once before cutting off. Out stepped a man whose presence commanded silence. Chief Raymond Miller, the police chief of our town. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a voice like iron, he didn't even glance at me first. His eyes went straight to Karen's son, who suddenly looked much smaller than he had moments ago. "Ethan," he barked, his voice slicing through the night. The boy froze, his bravado vanishing. Dottie was just, but the chief cut him off. "Inside." Now. The silence that followed was thick, the kind that makes your skin prickle. The boy's face flushed crimson as he stomped toward the house, muttering curses under his breath, but the weight of his father's authority silenced him. Karen tried to recover, stepping forward with her usual fire. "Chief, your son was only standing near the car. This man is exaggerating, stirring trouble, as usual." But Raymond turned to her, his eyes cold. "Karen, I've had complaints piling up about your family for months. Noise, harassment, racial remarks. I ignored it too long because of your constant threats of lawsuits. But tonight," he pointed at my phone still recording. "Tonight, there's evidence." Karen's confidence faltered. She stammered, tried to wave her hands as if brushing away smoke. "That video proves nothing. This man doesn't even respect community rules." But the chief's voice cut her off like thunder. "Respect? Respect isn't calling your neighbors slurs. Respect isn't treating private property like it's yours to claim. Respect isn't raising a son who thinks bullying is power." His words weren't just to her, they were to the whole street. To every neighbor who had gathered on their porches, phones out, recording this long overdue reckoning. The chief stepped closer, his tone low but firm. "Karen, you've crossed the line one too many times. Consider this your final warning before charges get filed. You harassed a homeowner. You allowed your son to commit vandalism and racial intimidation. And you dared to stand here defending it." The weight of his words hung heavy, and Karen's face cracked. For the first time, she looked uncertain, her arrogance slipping. Her son peeked out the window of their house, wide-eyed, clearly realizing his father wasn't going to shield him this time. I lowered my phone slightly, my chest heaving as I tried to absorb what was unfolding. I had expected another screaming match, another round of threats and fake fines. But instead, I was watching the most powerful man in town, Karen's supposed ally, the father of the boy tormenting Mustang on my side. And in that moment, I realized the truth was bigger than my Mustang or my driveway. It was about dignity, respect, and justice finally tipping the scales against entitlement. But as the chief turned to leave, Karen screamed after him, her voice shrill with desperation. "You can't do this to me. I control this neighborhood. You'll regret this, Raymond." He didn't even flinch. He simply glanced back once and said, "No, Karen. The only one who'll regret anything is you." Then he was gone, his SUV's taillights disappearing into the night, leaving behind silence broken only by the sound of neighbors whispering, recording, sharing every word that had been spoken. I stood by my Mustang, the reflection of the porch lights glinting off the hood, and knew that this was far from over. Karen wouldn't stop here. She couldn't. She was too prideful, too hungry for control. But she had just lost her strongest card and now the community had seen her stripped bare. The days after that confrontation felt different, almost as if the entire street had been holding its breath for years and suddenly exhaled all at once. Karen kept her curtains drawn, but her son's voice carried out into the night angry arguments with his father, slammed doors, curses hurled against the walls. It seemed the chief wasn't just giving him a lecture. He was dismantling the shield of entitlement that had protected him for so long. Neighbors whispered about it, and the neighborhood chat groups buzzed with the video footage. My phone was flooded with messages of support, people thanking me for finally standing up and showing that even Karen wasn't untouchable. But Karen wasn't finished. She stormed out 3 days later, clipboard in hand, marching down the street like a general without an army. She knocked on doors, shouting that the HOA was still in charge, that the police couldn't overrule her authority. Some doors stayed shut, others opened just enough for cameras to capture her tantrum, but no one signed the papers she tried to shove under their noses. Her power was crumbling, and desperation oozed from every step. The twist came when the chief himself showed up at a neighborhood meeting he hadn't attended in years. We gathered in the community hall, the air tense, the smell of coffee and old carpet heavy in the room. Karen sat at the front, arms crossed, her son sulking in the corner, his phone glowing in his hands. She tried to call the meeting to order, her voice shrill, but the chief stepped forward and took the floor. "Enough," he said, his voice booming. "This community has lived under fear for too long. Tonight, the truth comes out." He held up a folder thick with documents. "I didn't just see one video. I've been reviewing reports, complaints, and evidence against this HOA, fines written without legal basis, funds siphoned from dues into private accounts, votes falsified, and harassment documented against multiple families." Gasps echoed around the hall. Karen's face turned red, her body trembling with fury. "You can't expose private HOA business," she shrieked. But the chief's glare silenced her. When private business crosses into criminal activity, it stops being private. Neighbors stood up one by one. A single mother recounted how Karen fined her for leaving toys in the yard, threatening to seize her home when she couldn't pay. An elderly veteran explained how Karen's son had egged his porch while Karen laughed, then fined him for messy property. A teacher told of how she had been accused of bringing down the neighborhood's image because of the students who visited her home for tutoring. Every story added another stone to the mountain of evidence pressing down on Karen. Then came the most devastating blow. Leonard, the timid treasurer, stood and revealed bank statements showing thousands of dollars missing. Checks written to Karen herself under the guise of maintenance reimbursements. Her son had even been paid from HOA funds for security patrols that never existed. The chief read each line aloud, his voice steady, until Karen finally snapped. She lunged from her chair, screaming, "You're all liars. This is a conspiracy against me. My son deserves that money. I built this community, and you're nothing without me." The room erupted not in support, but in outrage. Shouts filled the air. "You robbed us. You ruined this place. We're done with you, Karen." She shrieked louder, clawing at the papers the chief held, until deputies stepped in and restrained her. Her son bolted for the door, but froze when his father barked his name. For the first time, he looked small, cornered by the very man who had once been his shield. The chief's voice cut like steel. "Ethan, you're facing charges too. Harassment, vandalism, and theft. You need to answer for what you've done." Karen collapsed into her chair, sobbing and screaming as cameras rolled. The deputies read her rights as the crowd watched in stunned silence. The woman who had ruled with an iron fist who fined people for Christmas lights and threatened foreclosure over basketball hoops, was finally exposed in front of everyone. Her son, pale and shaking, was let out separately, his father refusing to meet his eyes. The aftermath was nothing short of liberation. The HOA was dissolved under court order, its funds seized, and a community-led council formed in its place. Neighbors who had once been too scared to talk freely now gathered for barbecues. Kids played basketball in driveways, and cars, Mustangs, minivans, and all sat proudly in driveways without fear of fines. The chief visited often, not as an officer but as a neighbor, rebuilding trust and helping clean the mess his son and Karen had left behind. For me, the most powerful moment came a month later. I was polishing my Mustang when the chief walked up, his face weary but honest. "I can't undo the damage my son caused," he said quietly, "but I can promise you he'll face justice. And I can promise you this community won't ever be under Karen's thumb again." I looked at him, saw the weight of both fatherhood and duty in his eyes, and nodded. That's all anyone can ask. That evening, neighbors gathered in the street for a small celebration. Someone brought music, kids drew chalk murals on the pavement, and laughter filled the air where fear had once ruled. Margaret, the retired teacher, painted a sign to hang at the community entrance. "Our neighborhood, our rules, respect, not fear." When she unveiled it, people cheered, some with tears in their eyes. It wasn't just about Karen's downfall, it was about reclaiming what she had stolen: dignity, trust, and peace. I often think about the night Karen's son leaned against my Mustang, sneering, thinking he could intimidate me with words and entitlement. That night could have broken me, but instead, it became the spark that ended Karen's reign. Justice doesn't always come with thunderclaps, it comes with a camera phone, a community's courage, and sometimes a father willing to confront his own son. So I'll leave you with this. When hate and arrogance come knocking, is silence safer? Is standing up the only way forward? Was I right to record, to resist, to shine a light on the ugliness in front of us? Or should I have walked away and avoided the firestorm that followed? Tell me, was I right or wrong?